How do you even begin to wrap your head around a figure like Alexander the Great? Honestly, the name itself sounds more like a myth than a real person. To get a clearer picture, we kinda have to peel back all those layers of legend and look at him through the eyes of a really unique historian, someone who actually saw the world through a general's eyes.
I mean, this is the question, right? How does a 20-year-old pull this off? It's not just about winning a few battles. We're talking about an ambition, a vision, and a force of will so powerful it completely reshaped the world. To even start to find an answer, we're going to turn to one of the best accounts that survived, Arrian's Anabasis of Alexander.
And boom, right there, Arrian just drops us straight into the action. No long, boring intros. Philip, Alexander's father, is gone, assassinated. And his son, who's only 20, doesn't waste time mourning. He's immediately on the move, securing his power. This is the starting gun for a campaign that would change, well, everything.
Okay, but before we start following Alexander across the map, we really need to get to know our guide. Who is this historian Arrian, and why should we trust his telling of the story over anyone else's? So what makes Arrian so special is that he wasn't just some scholar sitting in a library. This guy was a big deal. He was a high-ranking Roman official, a governor, and a successful general in his own right. He understood strategy, he understood leadership, and he for sure understood the pressures of command. And crucially, he based his history on the memoirs of Alexander's own generals, guys like Ptolemy, who were actually there. So when Arrian describes a battle, it's one general analyzing another. That's a perspective you just can't fake.
So now that we know we're in good hands, let's get back to Alexander. As he locks down his control over Greece, we start to see his true character emerge. And let me tell you, it is a complicated and frankly a terrifying picture.
20. Just let that number sink in. At an age when most people are just trying to figure out their lives, Alexander inherits a kingdom that's ready to explode into rebellion. The Greek city-states, they see his dad's death as their big chance to break free. Alexander, well, he had other ideas. And this is the brutal reality of his methods. When the city of Thebes rebels, Alexander doesn't just defeat them. He lets his allies make an example out of them. The city wasn't just conquered, it was wiped off the map. This was a message of pure terror to the rest of Greece. Defy me and you will simply cease to exist. And then, you get this. Right in the middle of that horrifying destruction, he issues an order. Save the house of Pindar, a poet who'd been dead for years but whom Alexander admired. It's this calculated act of respect. He is the destroyer and the protector of culture, sometimes in the very same breath. This duality, this contradiction, is absolutely key to understanding who he was. Okay, so with Greece now silent, Alexander turns his attention to a much, much bigger prize, the massive Persian Empire. And it's here, on the battlefield, where his almost unbelievable self-belief gets tested against the cautious wisdom of his veteran commanders. This moment at the river Granicus is just a perfect example. His most experienced general, Parmenio, gives him totally sound, logical advice. The enemy is dug in on the other side of the river. Let's wait. Let's not attack straight into a fortified position. It's military strategy 101, but Alexander, he just doesn't see it that way. He ignores the advice, orders a full frontal assault, and leads the charge himself. And he wins, decisively. This wasn't just being reckless, it was this supreme, almost divine confidence in his own genius. But Alexander's vision went so far beyond the battlefield. He wasn't just there to conquer, he was there to build a new world. And nothing shows this better than the story of how his most famous city got its start. You gotta love this story. He decides to found Alexandria in Egypt, but they don't have any chalk or anything to mark out the city's future walls. So what do? They improvise. They use the barley from the soldiers' rations to trace this huge city's outline on the ground. It's just this perfect mix of grand ambition and down-to-earth practicality. And of course, an act like that couldn't just be a clever solution. Oh no, it had to be an omen, a powerful sign. His soothsayers immediately declared that the city, founded on grain, was destined to be prosperous and rich. For Alexander, even city planning was another chance to build his own legend. But for every act of creation, there's a moment of shocking destruction. The burning of Persepolis, the incredible ceremonial capital of the Persian Empire, is maybe the most debated, most controversial act of his entire life. This is the big question, the one historians, including Arrian himself, have wrestled with for centuries. Was this a justified act of revenge for Persia's invasion of Greece all those years ago? Or was it just a
A senseless, terrible mistake.
And here we go again. We see the cautious Parmenio arguing for pragmatism. He's basically saying, why would you destroy what's now yours? This is only going to make the people you're trying to rule hate you. But Alexander is driven by something bigger, by history. He claims this is payback for the burning of Athens. It's passion versus practicality, right there in a nutshell.
And this is where our guide Arrian steps in with his own judgment. And as a fellow general and governor, he's not buying it. He calls it imprudent, basically saying it wasn't some noble act of revenge, it was just a bad call. That kind of critical, honest assessment is what makes Arrian's account so powerful.
So, you'd think after conquering the entire Persian Empire, an achievement that would be enough for 100 lifetimes, Alexander would be done. But no, for him, the horizon was just the next starting line.
He marched his army all the way to what we now call Pakistan and India, fighting against war elephants, pushing his men to the absolute limits of human endurance. I mean, he was stepping into a world that was basically a myth to the Greeks, a land of legendary rivers and unimaginable size. And even after that grueling Indian campaign, his mind was already jumping to the next objective, Arabia. He was hearing stories about its famous spices, its incredible wealth, its unexplored coasts. It wasn't just about power anymore. It was this insatiable curiosity, a fundamental need to see what was over the next hill. He was a force of nature that just could not stop.
So who was he, at the end of the day? A brilliant general avenging ancient wrongs? A visionary who founded cities that still exist today? Or a ruthless tyrant who burned history to the ground? Arrian's account, you see, doesn't give us one simple answer. Instead, it gives us the man, in all his contradictory glory. It shows us the evidence, the genius, the brutality, the boundless ambition. The final verdict? That's left up to us.